I have plenty of space on it, so we're good.
The minute it starts, the camera falls over.
I have it on my phone.
Okay. And we gotta keep it to like 1 or 2 or 3 minute answers.
How do you guys want me to introduce you guys? So, here, let me pull that
I
up.
would like to introduce Mike Strawn, the master of Quam.
What should I consider the sword one?
Andrew, what's your last name? Do you want me to introduce you first, last, or just Andrew?
Just Andrew.
There's a new sheriff in town.
Mike, Scott.
Yeah, there's a new sheriff in town. His name's Scott Host.
Alright, like to grab a mic. Did we talk to anybody?
I'm waiting for our guy to show up. Oh, back now. Yeah.
Hey, Scott. Mike's grabbed that mic.
You guys sit here, dude. This is Mike Stroll out. I'm ambassador of Quan.
I've been looking for an audience for this one.
What? Oh.
And then this.
Thanks for trusting managing this, by the way. Do you need this one for you guys?
Yeah, I'm gonna run some questions.
Testing.
I have that one muted.
See, I don't know, man. What are you talking about?
Scott, you're on the end. Mike's got to be in the middle.
I got it.
We're both in the middle.
I only got Mike pickup on the end seats.
I thought you were just going to hand somebody the microphone when we talk.
For the audio, for the recording, the video recording. This microphone and that microphone.
Oh.
I want you guys on the ends. And if one of you guys want to pull up a phone recorder for yourself, just so I can mix it all together, I don't know what.
All right. So where do you want me to sit? Like, what's?
What?
Where do you want me to sit?
You sit on that side.
Oh, like in the blue chair.
Yeah, whatever you're inside.
Okay.
Yeah. If you get feedback on one of these, it's more than likely this one. So I'll just, if you start getting feedback, I'll just shut it off.
Dim the lights. Start the smoke machines.
You know, they gave an idiocracy when the president comes out.
Barely. Dean, your camera, I think it's pointed more on that side than the center.
Chris, how's the centering on the camera?
I fixed it up.
Dean, question. So is this being sent to those, or is this just recording?
It's just recording on my camera.
Okay, so I'm going to be speaking from like. Okay.
Make sure that's working.
Like.
You can move it.
Here.
It's moving. All right, we're going to get started right here. Welcome to AppG's next generation of game devs. If you guys have any questions at any point, feel free to raise your hands. I'll run around, give you a mic, and you can ask them directly. We'll get started with, this is Scott, Mike, Andrew. We're all underneath the publisher AppG, and many collective years of game design altogether. So I don't know if you guys want to start off by talking about what games you guys have been working on, your history.
Well, I made my first game in 1992, Galactics, if you ever heard of it. Then it, what? And then 1994 I made Raptor Call of the Shadows, then 1999 I made Demon Star and Treasure Fall, then I worked for PopCap Games, and I made Banana Bugs, then we made Mystery, what was it called? Wizard's Pen? Some mystery game, I don't remember, there's a lot of games we worked on at PopCap. And then I basically did contract work for 10 years, but now I'm back on making a remake of Raptor, so.
So, Scott's been in the industry for a long time.
He's a fossil, basically.
Yeah. And obviously now he's working on Raptor Remixed.
Yep.
And obviously he's also bringing back Demon Star. So I myself and Andrew here, we're working on Below the Stone, and it's a pixel art roguelike about dwarves. There it is.
This is the feedback mic.
It's a pixel art.
I think
No,
you,
it's not.
you
It's
killed
not
it.
transmitting.
Sorry, I have no technical
We're out.
difficulties. Is it on?
I think it's
Mine's out.
testing.
It's for feedback.
But yeah, it's a pixel art roguelike about dwarves on the quest of the deepest depths. Andrew here is our programmer. I'm the lead artist and director for the game. And I'm happy to introduce it to you guys and maybe answer some questions on how I got started in the industry and what I learned along the way. Of course, Scott here, you've been in the industry for a lot longer, and I'm kind of new to all this, so kind of different perspectives on this panel. Programmers. There you go. Programmers and artists alike working on this. So, yeah. Did you, Andrew, maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Testing. All right, okay, this is just not on.
No,
It's not on. No. Hello. No.
Yeah, let me double check.
How about now? Hello?
Just give me your mic.
It says.
Oh, it's on?
All right. How about I use this? All right. All right. Hi everyone. So yeah, my name's Andrew. I'm the lead programmer on Below the Stone. I think one interesting thing I could say just to introduce myself, other than being the lead programmer, is that basically me and Mike, we started, like making Below the Stone, but the reason why we're doing it is because like we met each other. So like we started in 2018 with Below the Stone, but we met each other playing video games, and I think that's interesting because like 10 or 20 years ago, it's less likely that two people are going to meet each other in like some multiplayer game or something, something like that. So it's new, interesting, kind of see how like the internet is connecting people in all these different ways, and brought us together, and now is bringing us Below the Stone. So
Cool. Do we have any questions starting out, or? All right. So, first question is, describe like what's a game development cycle like? Like, just broad overview, start to finish.
What? Hello? My mic's not working. I like to do the game dev a little bit different. I like to make the engine first, then the tools, then actually start making the game. So that you have all that, so it seems like in an indie game dev, like the first few games we made, you wind up redoing all the stuff over and over. And then the artist got to redo because you don't have the engine made. So, well, now when you have Unity, stuff like that, it's a little different, but I don't know.
So I know Below Stone uses Unity. Do you guys want to talk about how that like style, how that comes to be?
Yeah, so that's a good story. So I can totally agree with Scott in that it's really great to just be able to write all the code yourself because you have more control over the code. You don't have to wait for any updates if you're using libraries that have bugs or anything like that, or you don't like the API or anything like that. It's nice to be able to just have everything be your own code. But one of the things that this mindset that I had while learning programming, like out of high school, getting into college, learning a little bit of C++ and C# here and there. One of these mentalities that I had was like, people have made physics engines. They've made their own, like there's Box 2D or, PhysX or whatever. And it takes time to, make something good like that. And it's like, if you want to make something and the idea is more like high level, it's like, you could say to yourself, well, what's the point in spending the time to make that physics engine if people have already made it and have published that work as like a library or something like that? So with Unity, like when I first found out that Unity was free, I was like, all right, like I gotta try this out. So basically I, started learning Unity, and then we started eventually making Below the Stone together. So it's the fact that there's such a wide variety nowadays of like free, open, game development tools that exist that allow people like us to actually build these types of games that we're making. So.
Cool. So that being said, do we want to get into like the difference between an early game dev or versus like modern day? How was it back in the prehistoric era of game dev?
Well, back first to get a dinosaur. No, I mean back in the 90s, it was all like software rendering. There was no textures and stuff, so you drew everything to like a RAM buffer, and every byte was an index into a color. It wasn't, RGB, like you had a palette, then the lookup table, and it was very pretty easy. You just draw this stuff to memory, and then you blit that to the screen. And now it's like got engines and cross-platform stuff, and like I use BGFX for the graphics now, and STL for input and audio. So it's a lot different. It's a lot more time-consuming now than it was. It's like generally, a game takes about 3 years now. And back then we made Raptor maybe a year and a half. I think maybe our first came in 9 months. So now I'm porting them. It's pretty easy to port though. So, Mike.
I mean, I think when it comes to indie games nowadays, it's you and I, Scott, have talked about this a lot. It's a lot more like jazz than it is like a pre-planned exactly what you know what you're gonna do at any given time. And it's nice to be able to talk with your team and be able to just come up with ideas in meetings, right? And just be able to do that. Whereas I think a lot of AAA games in the past and present are kind of stuck in this thing where they have 3 weeks of meetings before they decide, we'll add this one item. We'll add potions. It takes 3 weeks of meetings to decide that. Whereas an indie game can just be like, all right, let's do this. This is a cool idea. Let's do it. I think those things have not changed over the years when it comes to like AAA studios. It makes sense, right? Because they're big studios and there's a lot of money involved and stuff. But indie games, because we're on kind of, I guess, at the lower end, right? We're able to still like have a lot of creative freedom in what we want to do and what we want to create. Scott here, and Dean, the one working on this panel, and Andrew here, we're all going to have meetings with Below the Stone and be able to talk about, like, yeah, this is a cool idea. Let's work on this right now. Let's do this. We have to work on things we're interested in, not just, it's not like a 9 to 5 thing. And yeah, I maybe that answers the question a little bit, but.
Yeah, and remember, if you guys have any questions at any point, feel free to interrupt.
So it's not set in
Raise your hand.
stone.
Yeah.
Hey. I guess my question is, I'm just curious because this new branch of Apogee is like rather new. I'm curious, how did like the relationship between you guys specifically with Below the Stone, how did that like come to be?
It was interesting. So I had this talk with a few people, Andrew included, where we were thinking about doing a Kickstarter back in the day. We had, what was it? Probably 2019. We had a Kickstarter, and the idea was initially we were going to try to get funding, and plans sometimes don't happen the way you think they do. In our case, we ended up getting like 170 backers, and these were strangers to us.
What was the goal?
It was a $10,000 goal, which, I mean, when you're talking about indie games, it's especially with a team of like 3 people, 10,000 can like, it sounds like a lot of money, but it can dry up pretty fast too. If you're trying to hire artists and people working on music and stuff. So we set a goal of 10,000, and we only made 5,000 of that goal. And although it failed to make the funding, we had all these fans who were talking to us. We're like, hey, we still want you to make this game. We want you to keep working on this. We love this idea. And we were thinking to ourselves, a lot of people like this. Let's keep going with this. Let's see where it goes. And several publishers started reaching out to us right after that Kickstarter failed. So this Kickstarter that failed was actually attracting attention still. It wasn't like
We're still getting it out there.
Yeah, just putting your face out there has helped us a lot, right? Like just if I were to give any advice to anybody wanting to work on an indie game, it's to just put yourself out there, see what people's reception is, right? Maybe there's something that you gotta fix. Maybe there's like, people will say like, hey, this would be fun with this in a game. And you can try it out, see what, there we go.
It's not me.
That might be next door. So, yeah, I mean, when it comes to what we did, we ended up, and this will relate to Apogee. We ended up having Apogee reach out to us as one of these publishers. At first, I'll be honest, I was blocking every publisher that was, literally every publisher that was messaging me, like, hey, we would love to be your publisher on this game. I was just blocking them because I thought all publishers have to be evil, right? So eventually, Scott Miller reached out to me, and he's a very nice, he messaged me, and like every other publisher at the time, I just blocked, and then he messaged me on Twitter, and then I blocked him there, and then he found my Facebook, and I was like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And then I ended up talking with him a little bit, and I was like, all right, this is Scott Miller. I looked back, and I was like, all right, this is the Scott Miller. And all right, interesting. Let's see where this goes. And had a back and forth talking for a while, and we ended up coming to a deal. So Below the Stone was being published by Apogee, and again, another thing I'll say is, when you go into this, things don't always end up the way you expect them. I didn't expect to go with a publisher at first. I didn't expect the Kickstarter to fail at first. Eventually, we did another Kickstarter and ended up succeeding. We ended up getting. We set a goal of $20,000, and we ended up making $40,000 out of that goal. So from this original failure, right, and ended up becoming this big success over time. So again, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Here we go.
If you have a favorite line from any video game, could each of you say it?
A favorite what?
A favorite line, like a favorite quote from a game that a character says.
Something from Ultima.
Ultima.
There was something about the. I don't remember it exactly, but it was Ultima 7 when the pagan guy was talking to you when you're walking through the forest, like, poor Avatar, poor Avatar. Me and my friends still say that to each other.
I think, and what you're saying is it kind of had this feeling of like almost like this menacing feeling as you're entering the forest in Ultima, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Andrew, do you have one that you can think of?
I have a
Still
couple.
say that to each other.
A couple already?
Yeah, I'm still thinking, but I got a good answer. Wait, did you say yours?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm still thinking.
All right, so I got a good one here. It's really hard to, pick a favorite because there's like so many different kind of situations.
Any line.
All your
Anything,
beasts
yeah.
belong to us.
So I got a good one in my mind. Hopefully, this is a pretty retro one, I would say. So I don't know how many of you here have played Lego Island, the original. There we go. We got another one. All right. So this is a good line. Is one that is not always, but is one that's repeated a lot. So the one line that came to my mind, because I know on YouTube it started getting recommended to a lot of people, it's when you try to play Lego Island, but you don't put the CD in, and the little Lego character, the Infomaniac says, whoops, you forgot to put the CD in your computer. So, and each time, like if you, as a kid, you like play the game, but you forget to put the CD in, you hear that a lot. So that's my line.
I gotta share mine. Mine is, bet you can't stick it, Halo.
Awesome. All right, so any other questions before we move on?
Heather, just something kind of game dev related. So since talking about some of the game dev
Can you speak close to the mic? Thank you.
my apologies. So the game development times for background that you were saying anywhere from like 9 months to a year and a half. And now with your indie development, you're saying you started back in 2018 or so. Do you feel for indie development, even indie development, that the minimum viable product that you really need to deliver that people are expecting needs to be a deeper, richer, more expansive product than what you really need to deliver back in a like those big getaway?
I think there's some truth to that because now, I mean, you probably know there's a lot of competition now. It's not just back in the day, and I think you and I had this discussion before. where back in the day, there were only like 2 or 3 first-person shooters being released at any given time.
Oh, yeah,
Or, like there would be like 1 or 2 space shooters at any given time, right? And if you're a space shooter fan, it's like, all right, you get to pick 1 of 3 games, right? And nowadays it's like, okay, well, if you go on Steam and if you look up RPG as a category, you're going to see, 300 games that are being released.
3,000.
1,000, yeah, like next year, right? So there's a lot of competition. So things are indeed different. And what was the original question with regarding nowadays versus before?
Yeah, because do you feel like you need to put significantly more effort into your own product?
Yeah.
Just to release?
How do you feel about that?
I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, he was asking that. Do you feel like you need to put more into to get a minimum viable product for a game nowadays compared to?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's more work now. It's definitely more work now. I mean, it was so easy in the '90s. I mean, you could make the game in a short amount of time, and then everybody knew each other because the industry was so small. So it's like, oh, I got this game done. I'm going to email all my friends at these websites. They're going to put on the front page of the website, and we get a bunch of sales. So, and now it's like, whoa. You got to be on YouTube, Twitter. You got talk so much. You spend most of your day talking to people. You really didn't have to do that back then.
We just unmount this one.
It goes flying and hits somebody in the head.
We have one more question back there.
Maybe we can swing back to it.
You've gone through 2 different Kickstarters, one successful, one not. What are some things you found that that were super successful for you, or things you didn't do that you wish you would have done for new upcoming Kickstarter projects?
One thing I remember getting this question before, where who was it? Zizin? That was the.
Oh yeah, the other guy named Andrew.
Andrew Zizin. Yeah. There's another game developer who asked this question to us. He was asking for advice on Kickstarter, and as you said, what do you do different between the failure and the success, right? To me, I kind of, as like a retrospective on the whole thing, I kind of learned that both of them were successes in different ways, right? The first one ended up getting us noticed by people for the first time and made us realize that we're making something that people love, right? And we were able to say, like, all these people love our game. It's worth working on. It's worth putting our time into and stuff, right? Before we weren't 100% sure. We loved the game ourselves, but we didn't know if other people would love the game. With the second Kickstarter, we ended up, obviously it was a huge financial success, right? The first one ended up getting us attention from multiple publishers. It built our community. All these things were a success. So the way I answered this question from Andrew Zizin before, who asked the same thing that you are asking today, was I don't think I would do either of them different. I think each one succeeded in their own way and ended up teaching us a lot about the importance of, particularly for Kickstarter, getting pre-sign-ups, getting people to sign up to your community, make them part of your community. Have events around your Kickstarter to get people excited for your Kickstarter launch, right? So all these things, and I don't know what stage your game or your project or what you might be interested in is at right now, but I would say right away, build up your community, be patient with it, allow it to
Wait
grow.
for the pre-subs.
Yeah.
Wait for the pre-subs. You said that was a red.
What's that?
You said you wished you waited for more pre-subs.
Yeah. I think I would indeed wait for more pre-subs to pre-sign-ups or followers to gather before launching it. But yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We got one more question over here.
So as smaller teams, how do you combat fatigue or burnout or creative block? Because there's only so much work to go around, or there's more work to do than can go around. So how do you handle that?
That's a tough question, Andrew. Do you have any ideas on that?
I might have some things to say, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I'll tell you this, I can't really give you a perfect answer, but because there's a lot of times where it's I feel like one day, I'm all right, I want to get this done today, but then, you know, maybe I'll be honest with you, maybe I get distracted with something, right? I don't get enough done and I feel bad. And so it's like 11 p.m. and I'm like, all right, let me finish this, but it's getting late, so it's like, you know, getting hard. And so a lot of times what ends up happening is I'll stop at like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., which I don't like. I don't like staying up that late because then I don't like it. Yeah, that happens a lot, and you know, like the best thing I can say towards like answering your question would be like, because
putting tunes in,
I would say
trying
like
to get into it, or
now this is based off of like something I saw like a YouTube video. I thought this was a good idea. It was actually a podcast that John Carmack was in. I forget who the podcast was, but and I've heard this before, so hearing it from him was like a confirmation on this idea that it's from a programmer's perspective, at least from my role, it's good to try to make sure that you're like, don't try to over focus on one specific task of like one thing to do. Try to find different things to do. So if you do get fatigued on like one particular thing, don't try to get in this mindset of like, I gotta finish this before I move on to something else. If you can, like try to solve different problems. If you get tired with one problem, pause it and then move on to the next one. And that'll kind of help, you know, I think it helps your brain to kind of like not become like mushy, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, it's when the rubber ducky fails, you're like, all right, I gotta move on.
Yeah. So that's if anything, that's the one thing I would say that would help with like the whole fatigue thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got about like 5 more minutes here, so
you gotta talk faster.
I think I saw you first, but welcome back.
So I was just wondering, whenever you get to, I guess, the end of the development cycle and you got project products,
Can you speak a little closer? Yeah.
Whenever you get to like the end, or like near the end of development, or at some point where you have a substantial product like developed, a lot of times in the game, you know, the common places in this is like stuff like Steam or GMG or like just PC in general. I was wondering, at what point, I don't know if this would be like a developer decision, like publisher, probably. At what point do you decide to go multi-platform? And if so, what is I guess how complicated is the process of getting your game ported to a different system like PlayStation or Switch?
I think the best answer for that is you do indeed need to wait until you have like a 1.0 version of the game before you think about getting on Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, all the rest, right? That's kind of how we're strategizing a little bit, where you just want to focus on, okay, hit 1.0 on Steam. That's the easiest way to do it, and then that way you're not like fighting, porting. Okay, well, you know, we need to update the Steam version, now the Switch version, now the Xbox version. You know, every time there's an update, you have to update every single version on every single platform. So it's best just to do 1.0 on Steam, and then just, okay, now it's time to port to everything. And when you have a publisher, that does help. The publisher will hopefully help with porting the game on all these different consoles, right? They'll hire like a third-party team, or you'll be able to do it yourself, and you'll be under the comfort of a publisher to help finance it. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is sort of similar to what you just said. Is it more difficult to release your games onto one platform more than others? Or so than others?
Like Mike said, I mean, you get it out on the PC first and make sure it's bug-free, so you're not fixing bugs on multiple platforms. Is it not working?
Yeah, it's working.
Oh.
Just giving it back to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I stole his mic for a moment.
Yeah. That's my, that's mine. Yeah, I got your axe.
Thank you. Did that answer your question? General? Okay, thank you. And yeah, the question here.
I might have missed it, but how complete was your game when you went into that first Kickstarter? Was it just a concept, or
it was indeed like pretty much a prototype. Like it was a very rough prototype version, and we kind of hatched together a trailer, right? A lot of it was just like a visual, like kind of selling the future of what we wanted this game to be, right? Like a lot of the enemies were just kind of like, you know, basic pathfinding, just walk right toward the player. You know, it wasn't like a game yet. But by the second Kickstarter, it was starting to, you know, become much more of a game. And yeah.
Were the graphics kind of intact? Like you're describing like the systems and the AI weren't there.
Okay.
I mean, it looked pretty at that point.
It was definitely prettier.
Okay.
Yeah, right. But it was definitely it was prettier. I would say that like generally speaking, the art style hasn't like generally it's pixel art, right? So a lot of it's not like we were using a lot of placeholder stuff all the time. I always made the art with the intention of it being used in the game. So since the beginning, the art has always been like trying to be like, as polished and clean looking as possible. That's just my perspective as an artist. So, but yeah, I appreciate your question.
Thank you.
We have a question over here.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Quick question. What does your development workflow look like from like a software development perspective? Is it like waterfall, agile, wing it all the time? And do you have a project manager or do you just manage yourselves?
I think, what do you...
What was the question?
Can you repeat the question for me?
From a software development perspective, what does your workflow look like? Like traditional waterfall, agile, just some hybrid? Do you wing it? Do you have like a Kanban board or whatever? Or and do you have a product manager to help assign these tasks, or do you just manage yourselves?
I think I can start by saying it's definitely different from every studio, right? It's never going to be like one answer for like me and Scott have completely different ways we function, right? And like for us, it is a little bit of winging it, but generally speaking, we plan a good like 3 to 6 months ahead of where we're going to be, right? That gives us like a general layout of like, and we know all the big like story beats we want to hit, right? We know all the big like, this is a big feature we want to do. This can happen. I think your project manager kind of describes them as what was it, epics? I think that was the word he used. In AAA they call it like an epic when it's like okay, this is like a year-long thing that we're going to be working on. And then there's like the little micro things in between. The micro things you can plan out like somewhere between now and 3 months from now, right? Versus like the epics, it's like okay, well this is like a big like combat overhaul or something, right? That could take a lot of time, right? So. Things like that, it's hard to say. There's no like preset, like this is the way we do things. There is a lot of jazz involved.
Yep.
Like, yeah. But did you want to go into it a little bit?
You basically said what I would say.
Okay.
A couple things maybe.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so like when you said agile, I already like started thinking about like
Never a dull moment at Stroll Art Studios.
I had one of these chairs at this convention break under me when we first started this, so believe me, you're not the first.
Yeah. So I'll try to keep it short, but like basically like in more detail, like one thing we do for our like workflow is we were using Trello, we are using ClickUp now, and so basically what we do is we say, all right, these are some of the things we want to do. So let's just make a bunch of cards for each task. And then people can look at it and be like, all right, I feel like doing this today, so I'll work on this and I'll move it over to the in progress or whatever. When they're done, they move it over. So like he said, jazz, like, whatever people want to work on, but there are things that have like a priority, so we will say like, all right, you can be free to do whatever you want, but like, these things are more important for, what we're doing with like, we want to improve gameplay, whatever, stuff like that. So we don't have like an agile or anything like that. We're just trying to kind of go with the flow essentially, so.
Just to be quick, do you have anyone demanding like deliverables on a certain date, or is it just like it's done when it's done?
No, there isn't the pause was because, there's certain types of situations where like getting a demo for like an event like this, but even then it's like, we'll just make the build. Like I don't, it doesn't matter if something doesn't get done in time. It's just, I'd rather someone who's working on something make it right and good the first time rather than rushing it just for like an event like this. I'd rather it not be in the build and have it be ready later on. So yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, do we have any more questions? Any interested game developers? Yeah.
All the way back. Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna skip that. You're fine.
Who are some of your favorite game developers?
Oh man, I think I know your answer.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Tell the story.
Well, when I grew up, I always liked TooManyGames, so Richard Gere probably went like the person I look up to. I used to actually want to work there for, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to work at Origin one day. And then I made my first game, Galactics. I just uploaded it to a BBS, and all of a sudden I walked to the mailroom one day and I got like a bushel load of orders, and I was like, okay, I'm doing this on my own. So it's basically me.
Andrew?
Yeah, so I would say if you want like a number one, I would have to say Notch. My number two would be actually, say what?
It's a controversial answer nowadays.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, but my second would be, I'm trying to remember the name, but I discovered them later on in my life, but like the developers of Dwarf Fortress. I would say the reason why I look up to those developers is because they're kind of from I think our era of software development where there's a lot more accessibility when it comes to tools and things like that. Like they use Java and they use LWJGL and things like that. So and that's kind of where we're using a lot of other people's tools to make more complex games and things like that. So I try to kind of take harness the kind of ideas of that of what Notch him working on Minecraft and kind of putting that into our game, the same kind of mindset basically.
And I think my answer is
Scott Host.
Yeah, these two are my favorite game developers.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited for your game.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, is there any last minute questions that anybody has?
There we go.
Yeah, let's go ahead. I think this will be our last question for now. I think we've gone a little bit past our time. We've been breaking the rules here.
I got 15 more minutes.
So for game development jobs, I know the first thing you have in mind is someone who's familiar with
What?
That's
how we end at 4.
Okay. We do end at 4? What?
Things like that. But there's a growing list of people out there that are great with writing, moving to areas that aren't so technical. What would be like a recommendation or or do you see the spot for people like that, that may not have the engineering background, but definitely can do things like write or write a guide or something, things of that sort?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I am a writer on a couple games here, and it's hard to get into it. Usually, you have to bring in some sort of a lot of indie developers say they wear many hats for a reason. It's okay, I'm a graphic artist, a writer, and I work on 3D animation or whatever, right? It's okay, you got these list of skills. So I think, generally speaking, I try to use this advice and I used it for our Kickstarter. I think it's just putting yourself out there a lot of the times is what you need. You need to just put yourself out there in some form. There's many different Discords that have game development Discords that have these little communities that'll be looking for people to hire, right? They'll literally be job boards of people wanting to hire, hey, we need a writer for this, and this. Give us your what you've worked on and so forth. Here's the head. That's not how I ended up writing for video games. I ended up working on Below the Stone and actually meeting Scott Post here. So for me, when it came to writing, that was what I did. When it came to pixel art and art in general, I was working on Below the Stone. I worked on a few other small titles to begin with. I think game jams are a good way to enter the industry too. Just doing when it comes to putting yourself out there, there's multiple ways to do it. It's Kickstarter, game jams.
People doing mods.
Discord, mods, exactly, mods. A lot of people, a lot of Doom modders begin.
Level editors for real companies.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, there's people that they'll literally write letters to developers. They'll say hey, I'm your biggest fan. I worked on this, and this. and then they're like, okay, we want to hire you, which is kind of cool, right? Like I think Minecraft kind of does that model nowadays. They literally just hire like the modders from back in the day, and yeah. Hopefully that answers your question to some degree.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
I write for a lot of websites.
Okay, cool.
Like one buddy wants me to start writing short stories for different user games. So I've got that creative itch to try and get back into that and maybe start working with studios and that down the line.
That's a great way to enter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. I think this panel is complete.
We have till 4.
Oh, do we?
Oh.
15 to 4.
All right.
Let me just take that like that.
We have 10 more minutes.
So it's an hour?
Really quick, if we want to go through how you guys decided to make your teams for...
Scott.
Oh, God. Very long story. I like to vet people out for a long time. So I've been waiting for this one programmer. He did the engine for Age of Empires 4 and Company Heroes 3. He was supposed to start working on the game on Raptor, the new Raptor, with me in around Christmas. He just got permission now to start working on it. So, and the art guy, I was friends with him for 7 months before I said yes. I mean, I don't just somebody comes in, don't hire them right away, because if they're an asshole or something, they're going to ruin your whole project. So I really like to vet people out over a long period of time. So.
I can second this. You definitely need to vet people out. Be very careful who you hire, right? Who works on your game, because this is supposed to be your dream project, right? That you're working on.
You don't need the stress.
What's that?
Don't need the stress of somebody.
You don't want the stress of a person being like, well, actually, my idea is better than this, and your ideas don't work. You want people that you want to work with that kind of have similar ideas to you. And when me and Andrew started working on Below the Stone, like he said, we were just playing games together. And we're like, you're a programmer, I'm an artist. Why don't we do something with that?
And most people get bored real fast.
Yeah. A lot of people do get bored fast when they're working on it. Some people expect oh, this will be something I can work on for 3 months, not realizing that the question over here where it could take 3 or 4 years, right? So you need people that are willing to take the time to work with you for that long. So you better. It's kind of like having a nice neighbor, right? You don't want a neighbor that's loud and especially when you're working on a game and you're working in the same game for so long. So when it comes to Below the Stone, when we hired people, we had a vetting process. We would take months before we decided to actually pick somebody, right? Andrew, I don't know if you would be able to elaborate maybe
on just
people joining the team. How do you find the right team members?
Well, I think most. There's not much I would say honestly on that. I mean, I think from the get-go, we have a musician, and you kind of got the you kind of explained the mentality with it is you want to actually I don't know if you said this, but with our musician, what we did was we were looking for someone who wasn't just kind of robotically looking for a position, but they were passionate about the game we were making. So when we put out on Discords or in forums wherever saying we're looking for a musician, we didn't just jump on the people who were just giving kind of copy paste responses. We would look to see the individuals who are actually kind of looking into our game and then saying things like, oh, I like the gameplay or the art style, or I like how this game has this or whatever. So it shows that they actually kind of spent the time to actually see what the game was like. So that has a lot of weight into who ends up working on our game. So.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, one more question over here.
Because this is an Apogee thing, I have to ask, what is your favorite DOS era video game?
What favorite DOS game?
Your favorite DOS era video game?
Oh yeah,
Ultima 6.
Answer.
I don't have an answer because when I was a kid, the earliest operating system that I ever touched was Windows 95. So I never used DOS.
You can play old DOS games on Windows 95.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay. I was born in 1997, so I'm on that border of like, but I could, nowadays I could probably play some DOS games and get into that maybe. I play, I have a half brother who's I think like 10 years older than me, so I kind of inherited his NES. So I play a lot of NES games, that's for sure. So maybe I should get into DOS, like DOS emulation or something like that.
DOSBox is your friend.
Thank you.
You have one, Mike?
Before my time.
You got one more?
Let this old geezer talk.
So if there was like a game out there that you think needed a sequel but never got one, what would it be?
That's interesting. Is there anything
All of my favorite games had sequels until I died.
I think Raptor deserves a sequel.
Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. That's where it is.
Oh yeah. I would say probably Banjo-Kazooie. Either never got one but should have had one.
Banjo-Tooie.
Yeah, we're going to make another comeback.
Thank you.
All right, so I think that just about wraps up. If there are more questions. Anybody?
How would you like to close this game?
How would I like to close this?
Dean's gonna sing us a song.
Yeah, I'd like to say the Pledge of Allegiance up here.
Maybe is there like one final thing we had on our question thing? One thing to maybe wrap up all the lessons that we get.
I don't know. So overall, I guess the best question would be, how do you guys feel about the experience being game devs nowadays? Like personal feelings on the matter.
I wouldn't want any other job.
It definitely beats a 9 to 5. My God.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, it's like, for me, it's like, this is what I want to do. This is just, I don't want to do something that, other people say, oh, you should do this. Like, this is what I want to do. I think, like, from a very young age, I had, like, a lot of where I am right now is just because of my curiosity with computers, understanding how they work, things like that. And, eventually learning that, hey, wait a minute, you don't have to be like a college student to know how to program. You don't need to be a genius or anything. And when I realized that, like, from starting in, like, middle school, I just, like, tried really hard to, figure out, like, how to learn how to program. And then from there, thinking like, oh, I could use this and I could make games or I could do other stuff with this. But eventually, like in high school, I was like, yeah, I want to like make games. That's what I want to do because I like games, of course. So, yeah.
And I guess to give a real answer, like I wouldn't trade it for anything because you're able to put your creativity and what you love into something. So yeah, I think that's answers from everybody. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, we love it, but it's a very stressful job. It's probably not for everybody. It's like the time you get up to the time you go to sleep, you work every day. All these people wanting to like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And it's like, shut up, It's my game.
It's a job that you gotta love.
Take it very personal, too.
It's a very saturated market in any genre that you're trying to make nowadays, because everybody's trying to get into game making. But if you just stick with it, have fun with it, work with people that you love to work with, some like-minded people, of course. You stick with it long enough and you'll get there, right?
So I appreciate everyone coming here to this panel. Everyone here does. I would like to ask if you guys are all interested in coming down to the indie booth area and checking out some indie games, since this is a indie-themed panel. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, say I have Demon Star, the new Demon Star, running in the arcade area over there.
Yeah, right in front of the Rock Band stage. We got Demon Star running. In the area, we got Below the Stone, Exocide, and what's
Tokyo Underground Killer.
Tokyo Underground Killer. So if you guys want to stop by, we got games over here, we got games over there.
Yeah, so the indie booths are in the corner of the, I believe it's Hall A, right?
Yeah.
Hall A, yeah.
Yeah, we're on the far left.
Against the wall.
A lot of people who love what they're working on, working there, and a lot of people who are very passionate about what they're working on. So I think everyone should take
Time's
a
up.
chance to...
Oh, sorry.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great one. See you
Thank
soon,
you.
hopefully.
I didn't have a chance. They kind of switched to the next question. I wanted to say something about your question, which was that, like,
The what?
one thing that it's like, it's hard for me to explain this, but it's like one thing that I always like to enjoy to see about like programming and what game dev is that, like, yeah, back in the day, you know, there were less people making